Hi, I'm Jeff Shaw. I'm the VP of Members and Community here at Etsy. So this is our first Fireside Chat that we're doing in our brand new headquarters in Brooklyn. And the first Fireside Chat we're doing in this recording studio, which should mean terrific uninterrupted audio, except that we're having some construction still happening right outside the room. So if you hear drilling or dropping, that's what that is. So if you've tuned into a Fireside Chat before, you'll know that Heather Jassy was our previous host. She's moved into a new role at the company, working on values-aligned business. And we'll link to information about her new team and her new focus in the video notes. But I'm really excited to be here. I'm really excited to be here to talk to you guys about the Etsy Seller Advisory Board. And to also talk about the first in-person meeting that we had for the board back in March in Brooklyn. So here to share details about that are Etsy Seller and Advisory Board member Jason Oliva and Etsy admin Robert Brunson, and they'll both introduce themselves in a little bit. If you haven't tuned into a Fireside Chat before, so this is just one of many ways that we want to connect with the Etsy community and answer questions that sellers might have. So as always, if you have questions, go to our Etsy Success Facebook or Instagram accounts. You can put them in there and we'll answer them in this format or other formats. And with that, I think we'll just get going. So Robert, I'll start with you. So can you briefly introduce yourself and then also the Seller Advisory Board?
Sure. So I'm Robert Brunson, and I work on our community outreach team here at Etsy. And as a part of my role there, I coordinate the Seller Advisory Board. And the Seller Advisory Board is a group of 15 sellers from around the world who are committed to helping Etsy sellers succeed. They come to our Brooklyn office twice a year and for in-person meetings, and are really focused on helping our community of both buyers and sellers succeed on the platform.
So why did we create the Seller Advisory Board in the first place?
That's a great question. So we're really committed to using the feedback we gain from our community. And prior to the Seller Advisory Board, we were doing that in a lot of really great ways that we've continued, such as our research, in-person testing, visiting seller studios, also through our support channels like email and support. But we really wanted to create a new experience where it feels more like a conversation between Etsy and the community.
And what's your vision for the advisory board?
So the vision for the Seller Advisory Board really is to provide a framework for facilitating this conversation. We want to have these high-level conversations with the community and just provide this platform for a deeper connection between Etsy sellers and Etsy admin, which is what we call Etsy employees here at Etsy. So,
can you tell us a little bit about your role in the advisory board in bringing it to life and in working on it?
Sure. So I work with a variety of teams throughout the company to facilitate and plan all the logistics of the program. I also serve as a first point of contact for the advisors, like Jason, and as a bridge between them and other Etsy admin here.
Got it. So then I'll introduce now our guest of honor, board member Jason Oliva, who runs his Etsy shop by the same name. So can you first maybe tell us a little bit about your shop?
Yeah, hi. Well, my name's Jason Oliva. I'm 45. I've been painting professionally for 17 years, and I've been using Etsy as my e-commerce platform for a little over 3 years. There you could find lots of editions of handmade works on paper, jewelry, shirts, cards, sculpture, even a coloring book. And all these over 200 items are all sort of based on paintings that I had sold throughout all the years. And I also have a studio in Tribeca. It's attached to an event space and a wine shop. So if anybody is ever in New York City and they want to reach out to me and come visit, come down, there will be wine. So.
Terrific. So why did you want to join the advisory board?
I mean, as soon as I started using Etsy as my e-commerce platform, as I mentioned, I was really looking for a way to meaningfully contribute to the community. And I'd always been a big believer, if you help the people around you achieve their goals, yours just sort of get met along the way. And so when Etsy announced the Seller Advisory Board, I thought, this could be an opportunity to really help 1.6 million Etsy sellers possibly achieve their goals. And to me, that was really exciting. So I also felt, I had the relevant skills and experience. So when, I became a board member, I was just, honored and happy to contribute.
So, Robert, I think you had said that there were over 600 sellers that applied to be on the board. So what was the process of winnowing that down and selecting our final group of 15?
Yeah, so we had, like you said, over 600 sellers apply, and we received just all these thoughtful applications, and we were really honored to receive so many applications that took a lot of time to complete. Each application included open-ended questions, which really allowed us to get a better glimpse of who these sellers are. When we were reviewing those applications, we wanted to focus on high-level segments of sellers that could really reach as many folks as possible. We know we can't represent everyone, but we wanted to get as many folks in the mix as possible. So we focused on representing each high-level category, like handmade, supplies, vintage, but then also other types of sellers, like new sellers or sellers who've been on the platform for much longer. Also like wholesale sellers and sellers from around the world, like Kath from My Bearded Pigeon, who's based in Australia. So ultimately, we really wanted to focus on sellers who were really committed to working with us to help other sellers succeed.
And how does the advisory board actually work?
So that's a great question. So each of these 15 advisors, they are committed to helping the whole marketplace. But to do that, we bring them to our Brooklyn headquarters twice during the year, where they get to meet with other Etsy admin. In addition to being in correspondence with us throughout the year, we feel like these in-person meetings are a really important part of the process where we can have these personal conversations. And then following those meetings, we take a lot of notes and then we share those throughout the company. So I put together a report that we can share with all the relevant teams who the feedback most closely is affected by, and we make sure they all get to see that. And then we report back to each subcommittee and other sellers so they know what happened at the Seller Advisory Board meeting as well.
So I know there are also 200 sellers on subcommittees on the Seller Advisory Board who are involved in the process. So can you talk about how they get involved in the process and why we established that?
Sure. So each Seller Advisory Board member heads up a subcommittee of approximately 15 other sellers whose business is in some ways similar to their own. So, for example, we have a subcommittee of wholesale sellers and a subcommittee of sellers who use outside manufacturing for their items. So ultimately, we wanted to bring in these other voices to expand the conversation in a really scalable way. And so Jason even led up a subcommittee of mostly full-time sellers. Can you talk more about what that was like?
And Robert's been hugely instrumental in liaison between all the seller advisory boards and their subcommittees and back with Etsy. And so my subcommittee is great. I was fortunate to be paired up with 15 full-time sort of small business Etsy sellers, and all in the United States. So I'm in the United States. And we use Facebook groups, for example, email to sort of communicate with one another. Prior to the actual live seller advisory board meeting, we had a video conference, and we discussed topics suggested by Etsy that would be used during the actual seller advisory board meeting. So I just found that they play a vital role in sort of preparing me to come to this meeting with their ideas and my ideas all well thought out, and having a bigger, broader view than just my own personal opinions. And then one of the fortunate things, like you said, there's 15 seller advisory board members with 15 member subcommittees. So when it's all said and done, we report back to over 200 people. And a lot of the subcommittee members, especially mine, are all captains of Etsy groups, and they have a large connection to the Etsy community. So that information really gets disseminated back, And I think they're all looking forward to sort of the next round of getting together and discussing things for the next live board meeting.
That's great. Let's talk about the first in-person meeting back in March, this 2-day meeting. So Jason, can you maybe first describe what that was like?
Yeah, it was, we all arrived at Etsy headquarters. And initially it was set up, so all the seller advisory board members can, get to know each other, a little lunch. We had a tour of the headquarters. But people had come from as far as Europe and Australia, and I had a sense that everybody really wanted to roll up their sleeves and get to work, and Etsy had this really intense 2-day programming set up for us. And so we were surrounded by lots of Etsy admins, and they were equally excited to get to work. We had a lot of Q&A time with Chad Dickerson, the CEO, which was very enlightening. I mean, at one point we were all sitting around having a Q&A with him, and he posed what seemed like such a simple question to all of us and stumped us. And he said, well, what's the most important thing to an Etsy buyer, So we all went around with the obvious try, the picture is this, that, and in the end, I don't know if you want to pause the video at home and try and come up with your own answer, but it was the speed of the website, the load time, And so we were all a bit, sort of blown away and thought, oh yeah, people would abandon carts or just abandon the website itself if it wasn't fast, We also got to meet with a lot of the department heads for products. We also met with John, the chief technical officer. He was very popular over the 2-day meeting. Everybody always wanted to sort of corner him and pitch them all their ideas and show them all their little workarounds.
Internally too.
Yeah, he was very popular. Yeah, and everybody just wanted to say something to him and see him scribble it in his notebook, knowing that maybe I really contributed to some sort of new way or new feature. But yeah, overall, it was really well organized, and one of the best sort of organized experience in my professional career. Yeah.
So that all sounds really good and positive. I know Etsy sellers are going to be curious, did we get to some hard conversations? Did we get to some of these really core topics that we know a lot of sellers care about? What did you guys discuss that you felt like was meaty and challenging?
Well, there was an overall agenda, so we did have 3 main topics of focus. The first was Etsy's approved manufacturing, and just talking about all the concerns around, the integrity of the marketplace as a result. How are products, going to be distinguished now that there is this ability, and even down to the application process itself. Another important topic was communication. Are Etsy sellers being heard? Is the flow of communication good? If Etsy has something really important for us to know, are we hearing it? Are we not missing it? So communication was a big, really important topic. And last, it was really, how can we help Etsy sellers grow their businesses? And that just ran the gamut from everything from finance to sales and marketing to production. We even had a really extensive brainstorming sessions with hundreds of Post-it notes about coming up with different ways, things to add to the platform itself that might help Etsy sellers grow their businesses.
How did you come up with the topics in the first place? Were the subcommittees involved in any of that? Did we set the agenda? How did those come up?
Well, I think Robert, you brought those to us.
For the first meeting, we really wanted to focus on some pretty high-level topics, and so we listened a lot to the community through all of our communications channels, and then worked with senior leadership to really hone in on the specific topics that we wanted to bring to the table, which, as Jason mentioned, were this manufacturing, Etsy's communication with the community, and then how we can help sellers grow their businesses.
So Jason mentioned a couple people that they met with. Who else from Etsy was represented? Who else interacted with the advisors?
Yeah, we were really lucky to have a lot of voices at the table, and so we tried to bring in as many Etsy admin as possible, and so that included a lot of folks from a variety of teams, but also, as Jason mentioned, our CEO Chad Dickerson was there, and our CTO, and other members, senior members of our product and community teams. In addition to that, we also planned several breakout sessions where the advisors could meet with different teams across the company, like our PR team, editorial, product, wholesale, brand, and a few others. So what of those did you get to meet with,
Yeah,
Jason?
we were sort of given an open-ended choice, and I was really interested in focusing on the wholesale and also the sort of retail outreach. So I met with two Etsy admins, Rachel and Michelle, along with Margot from France, who is another seller advisory board who was sort of interested in the same things. And the four of us sat down and had a really intense conversation, about, for me, my interest was, we see Etsy in Whole Foods and Etsy in Macy's, and I was really interested in how those relationships come about, and how is that growing, what's the future of that, and so we had really intense conversations around those two subjects.
So, Jason, you just mentioned wholesale. Catherine, can we make sure that we add a link to that in the video description just so people have information about wholesale? That'd be great. Thank you. Okay, so stepping back a couple points here. So what were some of the concerns that you personally brought to the Seller Advisory Board?
I mean, for myself, I first joined Etsy because I truly believed Etsy, had, technically had the best e-commerce platform, the fastest with the biggest global reach, and I also really liked the mission statement, reimagining commerce. I thought, oh, that sounds like something, exciting, that I would want to be involved in. So when I showed up, my concerns were really around those two things. I wanted to discover, one, is Etsy a really great place to work? Are they working on the juicy technical problems that would attract the best software engineers, the best sales and marketing people, the best finance people, and then with regards to the mission statement, my feelings were, what does Commerce Reimagined look like? Is there a roadmap? Is there a timetable? What's mission accomplished? So for me, it was, just looking for validations about my feelings about those things.
So candidly, do you feel like you got a good answer?
Yeah, on both topics, really. Where obviously Etsy is an amazing place to work. Everyone's just very happy and motivated. My feeling was I'm committing myself to this platform, and I really wanted to see people who were committed to it, behind the curtain. From a technical point of view, going back to listening to Chad speak and learning about his history, he was a former chief technology officer who's now a CEO. I thought, wow, there you go, that's great right there. And talking to CTO Tom and John rather, and some other groups of Etsy engineers, who are working on things that we don't see in the UI, it just really came to me, like they're working on these great problems. John was saying, like, even globalizing currencies, the decimals, is a sign go in the front in one country, in the back? Is there 3 decimals? Is there a comma? These are really juicy problems that attracts really great software engineering talent. And then, my other concern with, reimagining commerce,
That's a big goal.
Yeah, but you see, you see it. Etsy Wholesale's been around for quite some time now, and people who come to the platform can already see their companies, their small businesses grow in that way, from day one. Even the Etsy Advocacy platform is another thing. We're 1.6 million sellers. We have almost $3 billion in sales. We're sort of a powerful community, and we can affect change in things like health insurance and taxes and international shipping. So yeah, I mean, I was really, really pleased with, the way my concerns were sort of met.
What were some of the concerns that other people brought to the table?
I mean, across the board, everyone was just equally had, micro and macro concerns. I think a lot of the people, from the EU had concerns that were more related to doing business in their countries or global rollouts. A lot of other people had concerns that, focused more on their market niche. For example, the vintage sellers, were concerned about being represented. And I'll state right now, they were very represented. I for one, advocated on their behalf as a vintage buyer on the platform. So, yeah, everybody was really, had a real broad range of things they brought to the table.
One of the things that I remember you mentioning as we were preparing for the show that kind of stuck with me was the idea that everyone was sort of bringing a different perspective to the table from the advisory board. And part of that is having a diverse advisory board that sort of represents lots of different people. Can you tell us more about how each one of those voices shaped the conversation overall?
Yeah, I think we're referring to the conversation when I was saying all politics are local, right?
Yeah,
Is that
right.
Yeah.
That's it.
So
That's it.
I kept throughout the 2 days, and talking with everybody, I kept saying to myself this thing and saying to other people, I said, boy, everybody's speaking. It just sounds like all politics are local, meaning like if you live in a small town or and there's a big pothole in Main Street, like that's the most important problem, regardless of what's going on the other side of the globe. So for me, it was just somewhat not a revelation, but interesting to see how all these little things connected in the big global Etsy economy. Going back to our breakout session I had with the other seller advisory board member, Margot, and we were talking about the programs overseas, and she, her concern was, well, they're not in euros. Like I'd love to be a part of this, but it's not in euros yet. And someone like myself would sit there and go, well, what do I care? It's in dollars, But when you start to think about it, we know through the Etsy global community, people love buying stuff from somewhere else. So, the sooner that program is in euros, the sooner I might be selling things via wholesale to people in Europe, So you find it's all very connected, and it branches out amongst, what's important to everybody is important to everybody,
Yeah. It's an interesting sort of challenge to sort of communicate how connected everything is, and it sounds like this was a good forum for that. But
Yeah.
It's sort of an interesting challenge for us to be thinking about how we can make sure everyone sees this bigger picture.
Yeah, there's this ripple effect.
Yeah. Well, so that's one insight maybe we had from the Seller Advisory Board. Can you talk about some others that you felt like you came out with?
Yeah, I think I had a similar takeaway, but just a common theme that kind of came up through a lot of our conversations was just the complexities involved in creating a marketplace that works for all 1.6 million sellers. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, and so it's a big challenge there. It's a challenge that we're working on, but we need to work harder at communicating to the community how we're hearing their concerns and utilizing that feedback, and also providing more information around just how complex this work is.
So how do we sort of share the insights that we get with the rest of the company?
Yeah, so we following each meeting, we put together a big report that we share throughout the company, and I work really hard to make sure that the specific teams that are connected to the sort of the learnings that we gained are really connected to that report and hearing those insights. And then each seller advisory board member reports back to their subcommittee with a similar kind of report, letting them know what happened at the meeting. And I also wrote an article for the seller handbook so that the larger community would be aware of what was happening.
So we'll sort of wrap up here, but Jason, is there anything else that you wanted to share or that sort of struck you that we didn't talk about?
Well, one, thank you both for having me. Thank Etsy for being here. It was a pleasure. the Etsy Seller Advisory Board seems to be a real worthwhile thing that you guys have put in place, and I'm continue to be honored to be a part of it. Like harkening back to what I said, Etsy Advocacy, it's something after now being on the Seller Advisory Board, have become really passionate about. Like I said, we're 1.6 million sellers with almost 3 billion in sales. If we want to, and make some real change in the world, we have that ability, but it's a matter of Etsy harnessing us all together through this new program and trying to address issues like healthcare and small businesses and how governments view small businesses and micro businesses. So yeah, I would, as a parting thing, I would suggest everyone go over to Etsy Advocacy and just add their emails, to that, international as well, And again, if you're ever in New York City and you want to come by the studio, I'd love to, meet you all, all 25 million sellers of you.
Good plug.
It'd be wine. Right? So thank you. Thanks,
Absolutely.
Jeff.
Well,
Thanks for
thank
all
you
that.
guys for both for being here and talking about it. So as we wrap up, if there are any, as always, any questions for support or any problems that you have with the site, you can go to etsy.com/help and we'll get to you. And also, normal disclaimer, everything that we've talked about is true as of today. Things obviously change, and this video should be hopefully around for a long time. But I just wanted to sort of say that again. And that's it. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.